Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in Freshman English, and we turn now in your hymnals to page 1100 and the section called Penelope. Say three things quickly to set this study up. One, the old man, we know of him as Odysseus, has been changed by Athena to look like a really ancient old man, has been treated very badly by the suitors down below in the castle. Penelope is aware of it. Number two, Penelope is the wife of Odysseus. When she was young, she was stunningly beautiful. She isn't young anymore. She's waited for 20 years for word of her man to return. The great Odysseus, the inventor of that horse at the walls of Troy. She heard news that Troy had fallen. She was excited because that meant her man was coming home. Then a year passed. Then another year passed. And then another year passed. We are now 10 years since the walls of Troy have fallen. And nothing. No words, no rumors, no nothing. Every once in a while, I think there was this guy Odysseus, but I'm not sure he was your Odysseus. And then all of a sudden an old man shows up. So she says, bring him in, I'm going to ask him. The same question I've been asking anybody that shows up at Ithaca. Do you know my guy? Number three, we have dramatic on-stage irony. Of course, this isn't really a stage. We'll get to our Shakespeare later, but we have dramatic on-stage irony. She will ask him, do you know anything about my guy, Odysseus? And he will have to say, well, let's read it, shall we? Does he tell her who he is? Or does he not?
Penelope. In the evening, Penelope questions the old beggar about himself. Friend, let me ask you first of all, who are you? Where do you come from? Of what nation and parents were you born? And he replied, My lady, never a man in the wide world should have a fault to find with you. Your name has gone out under heaven like the sweet honor of some God-fearing king who rules in equity over the strong. His black lands bear both wheat and barley, fruit trees laden bright, new lambs at lambing time, and the deep sea gives great hauls of fish by his good strategy, so that his folk fare well. Oh, my dear lady, this being so, let it suffice to ask me of other matters, not my blood, my homeland. Do not enforce me to recall my pain. My heart is sore. But I must not be found sitting in tears here in another's house. It is not well forever to be grieving. One of the maids might say, or you might think, I had got maudlin over cups of wine. And Penelope replied, Stranger, my looks, my face, my carriage were soon lost or faded when the Achaeans crossed the sea to Troy. Odysseus, my lord among the rest. If he returned, if he were here to care for me, I might be happily renowned. But grief instead heaven sent me, years of pain. Sons of the noblest families on the islands, Dulichium, Same, wooded Zacynthus, with native Ithacans, are here to court me against my wish, and they consume this house. Can I give proper heed to guest or suppliant or herald on the realm's affairs? How could I, wasted with longing for Odysseus, while here they press for marriage? Ruses served my turn to draw the time out. First, a close-grained web I had the happy thought to set up weaving on my big loom in hall. I said that day, Young men, my suitors, now my lord is dead, let me finish my weaving before I marry, or else my thread will have been spun in vain. It is a shroud I weave for Lord Laertes when cold death comes to lay him on his bier. The country wives would hold me in dishonor if he, with all his fortune, lay unshrouded. I reached their hearts that way, and they agreed. So every day I wove on the great loom, but every night, by torchlight, I unwove it. And so for 3 years I deceived the Achaeans. But when the seasons brought a 4th year on, as long months waned and the long days were spent, Through impudent folly and the slinking maids they caught me, clambered up to me at night. I had no choice then but to finish it. And now, as matters stand at last, I have no strength left to evade a marriage. Cannot find any further way. My parents urge it upon me, and my son will not stand by while they eat up his property. He comprehends it, being a man full grown, able to oversee the kind of house Zeus would endow with honor. But you too confide in me. Tell me your ancestry. You were not born of mythic oak or stone. Penelope again asks the beggar to tell about himself. He makes up a tale in which Odysseus is mentioned and declares that Penelope's husband will soon be home. You see, then, he is alive and well, and headed homeward now, no more to be abroad far from his island, his dear wife and son. Here is my sworn word for it. Witness this, God of the zenith, noblest of the gods, and Lord Odysseus's hearthfire now before me. I swear these things shall turn out as I say. Between this present dark and one day's ebb, after the wane, before the crescent moon, Odysseus will come.
Now, of course, that final line, Odysseus will come, is ironic because obviously it is Odysseus. But on one count, of course, it's not Odysseus by virtue of the fact that he's incognito, right? He's as an old man or whatever. Let's do some quick annotative work here just to kind of make sure we know where we are. Of course, at level 1, Penelope calls it, note the irony. Who are you? Can you jot down in 3a? Where have we heard this before? Where someone asked Odysseus, who are you? And he answered, nobody. Right? Go back and remind yourself of that one in 3a. Odysseus is constantly in the Odyssey being asked, who are you? And he usually will respond, because that's exactly what Alcyoneus on the island of the Phaeacians asked him as well. Who are you? You were crying when the bard told the story about the fall of Troy and the heroes, Achilles and Odysseus and Agamemnon and Menelaus, and you started crying. Who are you? Right? And in every one of these encounters, it's always fascinating how Odysseus will either reveal himself or not reveal himself. For example, although you don't have it here, you know it because you read about it in the in book 4, part 4 of Hamilton's mythology, right? There's a contest by all of the men of Phaeacia, and the son of Alcyoneus, who is kind of a braggart and a great jock athlete type, and he picks up one of the heaviest discs. Are you familiar with this concept from the Greeks? You spin in a ring and you throw a disc, this flat kind of looking thing, and it flies through the air. The Greeks invented this as a contest, and the kid picks up one of the bigger ones and he spins and he throws it farther than everybody else, and then he turns around and he taunts Odysseus. He doesn't know it's Odysseus. Odysseus, he says, ha ha, how do you like that? I threw that. You old man, I bet you can't even get up out of your seat to throw it. And Odysseus says, son, where I come from, you mind your manners and you take care of old men. Whatever, you're an old man. I bet you can't even pick up one of these lighter discs and throw it. And so we're told Odysseus gets up silently, walks over, picks up the one nobody's ever thrown. He doesn't even spin. He just hucks it, and it flies further than every one. And the kid goes, uh-oh. And Odysseus says, sit down now. And the father, who's the king of the Phaeacians, goes, whoa, 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 who are you? And Odysseus has to say, me, I'm Odysseus. And then the kid goes, oh, right? Because this is the sacker of Troy, Odysseus, right? And he's like, oh no, oh no. We got the same game being played here. Notice Odysseus will deflect, but he will tell the truth. A lot of pain, a lot of suffering. I've been through a lot, he says. But I don't want to tell you too much about it. He says that it's too painful. She says, I'm not the woman I once was. When my man left, I started to age and age quickly. And now all I know is grief. She says, in that regards, put it in your notes, Penelope has had her own Odyssey. This is a story about multiple Odysseys. Of course, Odysseus. No question, Telemachus. But yes, we've got the Odyssey of Penelope. What are you talking about? She never went anywhere. No, she ages, though. She goes through the grieving process, and she says it. Now I got all these disgusting men, which is, of course, a great comfort to Odysseus, He had to be a little bit worried that maybe she was leading these guys on because she wants another man in her life, right? And she says, I got no interest in any of these guys, but I can't make them leave. And Telemachus, my boy, he's not going to stand by anymore because he's not a little boy anymore. He's a man now. He's not going to stand by and watch these guys eat up all of his father's rations and all of his property. So he's going to fight them, and she says, I'm worried because they're going to kill him. Which, of course, we already know they do want to kill him, right? Odysseus will then hear her tell about her deceit. If Odysseus is a guy who's a great liar, so is Penelope. She says, I told him, okay, I'll marry you, but first I have to make this burial shroud for my father-in-law, and so it's going to take me a while. So I'm going to do this. She says every day she wove, and every night she undid. Notice there's two kinds of weaving in the Odyssey. There's physical weaving, like this, and there's, of course, linguistic, rhetoric weaving, right? In other words, there's tricks and deceptions. And she says, you know, I had to do this. She said, I got away with it for 3 years, but in the 4th year they caught me. And now, she says, I'm probably going to have to pick one of these idiots and marry him because my husband is dead. Odysseus will say to her, I don't know much, but I know this. He ain't dead, and he is coming back. She will, of course, respond by saying, I wish I could believe you, but I can't buy it. Let's jump really quickly to level 2 at 2A, themes, messages. Well, one of the obvious messages here is things are not always what they seem. That's one of the central messages of all of the Odyssey, right? Penelope is certain she's talking to an old man. She's talking to her husband. Penelope is certain that her husband is now dead. She, of course, is right there in the same room with him. Odysseus, however, won't disclose. This is another major message. Sometimes you can't tell everything because the time isn't right. And you got to wait for the perfect time. And Odysseus, of course, will wait for the perfect time to disclose to the suitors, he's Odysseus, and then to Penelope, that he's Odysseus. The moment that he actually says to Penelope, I am Odysseus, will be a fascinating moment for us. All right? At 2B, of course, the symbolism here is powerful of the weaving, right? She's weaving that shroud and then undoing it during the day. In the same way that a good bard or a storyteller would weave a story. Remember, this poem is an oral story told long before it's ever read, right? So in other words, a good storyteller, think about the great storytellers you know in your life and the ways they can tell a good story, right? Of course, the irony is self-evident. She's talking to Odysseus and he says, no, he'll be here soon, trust me. And when he shows up, it's going to be like some nasty thunder on the top and lightning on the top of a mountain in a lightning storm. I will show up. He says, I'm going to show up. Of course, the audience knows that it's I. He's just saying, it's going to be Odysseus. He's going to show up. You watch. He hasn't forgotten about you, right? At 3A, of course, how about this one? The texts for you about disclosure or non-disclosure, right? Do you have a text you're familiar with, whether it be a movie or a TV show or even a game, where somebody is incognito, right? They got some kind of mask on or whatever, right? And they're talking to somebody who they know and should know them, but they don't know, right? Okay, and so it kind of is like, kind of shocks them in some way when they find it out later. Finally, at 3B, well, this is an interesting question. When was the last time that you somehow had to kind of fool somebody, but it was for their good, not to be mean to them? It was to help them, right? The most simplest of this, of course, are the secrets that you keep, for example, about a gift or something like that, and you don't want somebody to know, and then later they'll go, wait a minute, you knew about this, didn't you? And you'll be like, yes, but I wanted it to be a surprise for you. When was the time that happened where you did it? When was the last time that happened for you? Like somebody was actually not disclosing, not making full disclosure to you, but you didn't know, okay? When was the last time that happened? Well, there you go. Penelope, of course, has got a challenge in front of her, and that's where we'll go here in a second. Thank you.